morning and welcome to today's Facebook Live. So today we're going to be talking about different types of workplace styles and what we can be looking for when we are reconsidering what our future workplace is going to be and what our options are around the different types of work environments that we could be looking to move into. So we've been talking a bit about the future of work and what the opportunities that have been really presented to us through COVID are and how we can reconsider what our workplace is going to look like into the future. We've been enabled through this opportunity to really test new technology, new ways of working, new systems and processes in our business. And we now have the opportunity to look forward and see what it is that we can then take and adopt in terms of how we can work in the future. We've really got this opportunity to re-examine how we work and what we can do with that going forward. So what I want to do this morning is just take a look at a couple of the options that we have around what our workplace styles look like, give you a bit more of an understanding around how each of those different workplace typologies work, what organizations are typically using those types of workplace environments, and give you a bit more of an understanding about what your options are going forward and how your space can facilitate your business. So when we start to look at what our work environments are, they sort of sit on a continuum. And the first one is right from a very traditional style of workplace environments, which is typically what you might see in a legal or an accounting company, heavily densely occupied with offices, all the way through to a completely remote workforce. And now organizations such as WordPress are operating under that model, and they have absolutely no offices. So we have this very diverse range. And within this continuum, we have a variety of different stops along the way. And they're the things I'm going to start to cover with you today. So we're going to start with traditional. So traditional workplace environments are really configured of three main types of work environment. You have meeting rooms, you have offices, and you have workstations. Now, those types of environments are usually quite densely occupied with offices, so lots and lots of individual space and very little common space, or what we like to call we space. So those spaces are, you have a reception, you might have a very small tea point, there's not a lot of amenity within those offices typically, and the work points for the workstations are usually situated outside of the offices, and they're very few and far between, and they're usually for secretarial staff or administration staff to support those that are sitting in offices. Hence the reason we tend to see a lot more of these types of work environments in legal practice, because it is very much that individualized, highly built space. When we are looking at those particular spaces, they are quite costly because we have a lot of built structure, but they also inquire a lot of services design. So you've got lots of reconfiguration of mechanical, electrical, fire, and also then because we've got all of these people in individual boxes, we've also then got to increase our mechanical system to service the air conditioning that goes into that. So that's just a couple of the factors that you need to consider when you're looking at a more of a traditional style of workplace environment. The next one is the ridiculed open plan. So open plan is almost the inverse of what you would see in a traditional work environment. So lots and lots and lots of workstations. You would still have a few offices typically, but there is no other type of space that sits in those. There is no quiet spaces, there's no breakout type areas. So again, it's got the meeting rooms and it's got the workstations and the offices, but the ratio of offices to workstations is very different. There's a lot of workstations and not very many offices. And you really don't have the variety in there in terms of different spaces that people can go and work. What you've then got that sits kind of in the middle of this is your hybrid. Now, a hybrid work environment is what we're starting to see more and more of in today's sort of typical workplace environment. So you still have your offices, your workstations, and your meeting spaces, but you've also then got that coupled with breakout spaces, so places that people can meet and connect and collaborate that are not in a room, so informal types of meeting areas. They might be robust types of spaces for conversation, or they might be lounging type spaces to enable different types of conversation and activity. You then also have a larger breakout space, so somewhere that becomes a bit more multi-purpose, so people can actually work in that space, or they could eat their lunch, or they could have a meeting with somebody in that space as well, so it's a bit more multi-purpose. You've also got quiet spaces, so whether that's an individual room that someone can go and have a private phone call in, or they could have a one-on-one conversation with somebody. There's those sorts of spaces that enable people to find places of quiet that they can concentrate away from their desk. There also might be communal type spaces where that quiet activity can also happen. So there might be lounging facilities, or it might be smaller drop down zones where I can go and I can work with others in an open style environment, but under the understanding that we're all sitting there and we're all quiet and we're all trying to get our job done and being able to focus in that situation as well. So there's not the chatter or the phone calls happening around us. So you're having a lot of different types of spaces, and those types of spaces can take all sorts of forms throughout a work environment. And what you're enabling people to do by having a hybrid work environment is that you're enabling people to choose a space that supports the activity that they need to do at that particular time, but they've still got their home base at their fixed desk location. When we take that a step further, we start to talk about agile or activity-based working. Now, these two terms tend to get interchanged. Activity-based working, or ABW, is really that. It's around activity-based working. It's about choosing a space that suits the activity that you need to perform at that particular time. So similarly to what you've just been described in terms of the hybrid work environment, the activity-based environment has a range of different spaces, but you tend not to have an allocated seat. You may have what we call a neighborhood. So within that neighborhood, there might be a cluster of workstations that is allocated to your team or your department, and that is usually on a lesser ratio of people. So you might have 7 desks to 10 people, so a 70% ratio. And that's what you'll typically start to find in those sorts of activity-based work environments. But that's also then driven by what your requirements are as your organisation in terms of how many people are actually in the building at each time and how your organisation operates. So those ratios may vary as well. But with the with the activity-based work environment, you've got a variety of different spaces that you can go to. So you've got quiet rooms, you've got quiet lounging, you've got collaboration spaces, you've got collaboration lounging, you've got whiteboarding spaces, you've got active spaces. There's all these different environments in there. The cafes also function as a work environment. So if you think about going out to a public cafe, similarly, you've got that type of experience in your own work environment. So spaces where I can sit, I can eat, I can also work, and I can collaborate with others, or I can have meetings with other people as well. So it's quite a diverse work environment, and it's up to you then to determine the type of environment within that space that's going to suit the activity and the task that you need to perform, and finding somewhere in there that's going to help you do that. When you go to look at an agile work environment, it's starting to take things slightly further. So it's still the same sort of construct in terms of the pieces of the puzzle that come into that play. But what you'll start to see with an agile work environment is that ratio might shift, because you will find that more and more people are tending to work off-site. And they're coming and going a lot more. So an example of that is the Mapian workplace that we created. They have a lot of employees that work a lot of the time off-site. So they are working in client offices, they're in court, they're in different locations. So they had a lesser requirement for the need for everyone to be there. And so therefore we went for a more agile type of work environment. So still using all of those pieces that you have in an activity-based environment, but it's just in a different ratio and how that structure comes together. So they're the sorts of things that we're typically seeing. The other one that's starting to come out of that is also the hub and spoke model. So a hub and spoke model is when we have a corporate head office in usually a central or a CBD style location, and then we have what we call spokes that are regional office locations. So the intention for this is that when we have a very large workforce, so a large organisation, we have a centralised CBD hub which people can come to. That's our corporate head office. That's where we'll have most of our really important meetings. We bring people together in that space. That's our brand statement piece. That's where we have all of our corporate clients come in and we engage with people in that particular space. In our spokes, what they are is more centralized suburban office locations that facilitate people within the proximity of that zone being able to come and work in an office environment without having to do the long commute into the corporate CBD. It means that our CBD office can actually be smaller, which can save on rent, because obviously CBD rents are considerably higher than what our suburban rents are. But what it starts to do is it groups people together in pockets, but it keeps people together in terms of the corporate culture. because we are actually facilitating the organisation, but just in a different location, in a much smaller footprint, and we're bringing together people that are in a much more closer proximity. You'll start to see that larger organisations do follow this model, and that this enables people to commute less, and that we can actually then have really concentrated head office requirements, and we change the requirement in terms of why we're actually going into our corporate head office. And it tends to be for those larger meetings and those brand statements. Now, what we've got as an opportunity at the moment with the way that everything has been reconfigured, and we've been able to reimagine what our future is going to look like through COVID, the ability that we've been able to explore from working at home, the technology that we've been able to introduce, and the way that we're now communicating on different platforms. What we're starting to see here is that we can now start to explore completely different options. And some of those options can start to consider what we're looking at and calling a work club. So a work club is borrowing a lot of those sorts of principles that you'll see in co-working spaces and bringing them into our corporate office environments. So changing the actual reason in which we actually want to go to work and the need that we go to a workplace. So that workplace becomes a real brand statement. It's a place that communicates who we are, what our purpose is. It's really infusing all of those values and communicating that out into the world. We're going there because we want to connect with people. We're going there to connect with our clients and have meetings. We're going in there to connect with our colleagues, to brainstorm, to problem solve. So these spaces become far more active, which means that the types of environments that we have within those spaces need to be very different to the types of environments that we're having now. The ratio of our meeting spaces is significantly higher, whereas the need for workstations and individual work points is significantly lower, because that type of work we're actually doing at home. We're going into those spaces to connect and to collaborate. That's why co-working spaces have risen up so much, is because freelancers and small businesses, we don't enjoy working from home all of the time. It's great to be able to do really great concentrated work and really get shit done. But when we want to fulfill that human desire to connect with other people, to collaborate with like-minded people, to build a support network around us so that we can bounce ideas off each other, that's why co-working spaces have become so prevalent, is because they're providing another option for people who are in smaller business. It's a more cost-effective way of managing their space requirements. And I think we're going to start to see that those types of environments will start to bleed into our corporate environment. We'll be able to see those types of spaces facilitating our businesses as we go forward, because we don't need to be in the office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 to work. We need to be going in there to collaborate and to connect and remind ourselves why we're working with this particular organisation and what the value is that we are giving to the world as a business. So that's some of the stuff that we're starting to see in terms of how our work environments are starting to evolve, and the future that we can potentially start to reimagine with our work environments. We'll also start to see different types of environments start to come together, and a real mix of these. But the thing that I preface all of this with is that every organisation is going to be very different, and there needs to be a data set collected that underpins all of these decisions. You need to understand who the people are in your organisation, how they work, what they need to do their job, how they connect, how they communicate, what is the technology that they need to be able to do the work that they need to perform, and what does the environment need to look like in order to support them in being able to perform at their best. At the end of the day, we're all in business to make good business, and we need to find a blend that's going to support both our people but also our organisations so that we're all going to be able to thrive. So I'm keen to hear if anyone's got any questions or any thoughts on this topic. It is quite a broad subject, and I've condensed it into quite a short period of time this morning. But I think what we're going to start to understand is that our environments are going to be very much more tailored to our individual needs, and that we're going to be supporting a variety of different working styles into the future. But thank you everyone for joining us this morning. And if you do have any comments, I'd love you to come over and join us in the Facebook community group. So it's the Community Dialogue. Post your questions in there. We're keen to have a conversation with you, and I look forward to chatting with you next week. Thanks.